mobile reality.
Mobile soon.
Or whatever you want.
Soon.
Welcome to Cloud Realities Live, an original podcast from Capgemini. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van Rob.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And we are back in Barcelona for the Mobile World Congress 2025. Does it feel like a year since we were last there?
You know what? It doesn't. It doesn't. And it's all very familiar. Yeah. You know when you've done a conference for a few times and you get the familiarity in?
Yeah.
That's there as well.
Weird muscle memory, because like when I was thinking about it, I could only remember the fact that it goes across a few different halls, but I couldn't remember the specifics, like where the facilities are, where the good sandwich shop was. But actually, it all just comes like rushing back.
Yeah. Funny, isn't it?
It is funny. Ez, your first time here, and the first time you've recorded live with us on the show.
Yeah, it's quite an experience. Though.
Really?
Yeah, it is. Well, you've been preparing me all the way through.
Is Rob taller or shorter than you think he was going to be?
No, he was actually equal. I was actually thinking that, like, oh, yes.
I often get you're taller than I thought, so I must slouch on camera. I don't know. But yeah.
Rob, I think just for the listener, Rob is, I think somewhere around 5'4", something like that.
5'3.5", Dave.
Am I different in real life?
Yeah.
I would say you were a bit taller than I was expecting. I mean that in a good way.
Be honest.
You were about where, the height-wise, it's a funny thing, isn't it? But yeah, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So, how's your first impressions?
It's very crowded.
It is crowded,
isn't it?
It is
a huge, huge event. Yeah, it is.
I find the flow of this one is, let's just say, a little messy. It's hard to get in because there's cabs everywhere. Unless you want to find one, then there's cabs nowhere, or there is absolutely enormous queues, and there's like sort of a tricky traffic flow outside the main thing. And then when you get
No, Dave, the wrong word there is the traffic is not flowing. It's just traffic. Stationary traffic, yeah.
And then you get into the main event and there's like human traffic everywhere, and it's like, it's packed, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's packed. Yeah, and in some events, it feels like the entire city is built around the event. Like, for example, at Dreamforce, it feels like it's been taking over the entire city.
Yeah.
And here it doesn't feel like that.
No, it definitely
so there is
doesn't.
No flow, or that's the center of the universe.
Yeah.
It's a bit different.
I think that's right. And Rob, how long did it take you to get here yesterday? But we usually try to follow your travel trials and tribulations. So how did yesterday go for you?
It was a long one yesterday. Let's say 8 hours.
I mean, I got here quite straightforward.
You did.
How about you, Ez?
Yeah, me too. But let's not forget that it was actually his birthday.
Was his birthday. And he celebrated by having a pint of Long Island iced tea.
That he is still recovering from.
I always like to think I make good decisions.
I mean, that was an impressive one. Anyway, so what are we expecting of the week? I think what's interesting at this show, so beyond some of the other shows that we cover, is the consumer side of things.
Yes.
So we just went for a bit of a walk around in the consumer section. I mean, it's impressive. There's a few things I think you can observe about it. I'll start off with a straightforward one. The Samsung booth has got some of the best screens I've seen. Like,
huge, isn't it?
Absolutely spectacular looking booth. Yeah, amongst the biggest one of the biggest booths I've seen. But amazing sort of wraparound screen on three separate sides. And Rob, you were noticing a particular trend.
It's the rise of China. Now they're dominating in the floor. Honors, IME, China Mobiles here. You look at the tech they've got. Turning up with cars, all sorts of consumer home devices. Very clear that in a couple of years, I think they'll be taking the lead from the traditional players potentially. It is getting quite impressive what they're turning out.
And they use different visuals. You feel a complete China vibe. It's beautiful storytelling. So it also adds something, I think, to the level of communications in general. And now also utilizing all that power and technology in those huge screens that look beautiful. Like we were trying to detect the different tiles in a complete wall of technology, and we couldn't even identify the tiles. Like back in the days, we could actually count the pixels.
Be some shonky screen.
Yeah.
And you could count the pixels. Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, it's in color.
You're right, though. There is a thing about where they're sort of representing a lot of their sort of national vibe.
Yeah.
Culture, nature, pandas. Yeah, they use different images.
Marcel's here. You all right, Marcel?
Yeah, I'm okay.
How you doing?
The speed of the Chinese stuff is really amazing.
It's really the pace of development.
It's amazing. So I mentioned it before. Cars in Europe and in the rest of the world took 100 years, and now in a couple of years, beautiful cars. Technology is in, so the speed is amazing.
Big standout for me was what was the company that were partnering with Leica? Xiaomi. I mean, that was really interesting. One, that partnership exists, not Leica partnering with anybody else. And two, the way that they've fully adopted the look and feel of a camera. So it's more
the
of
handle grip, that attachable
a vintage
handle
camera,
grip.
actually. Yeah. It's the vintage feel.
Camera. And also the sort of, you could screw a lens on the front of it. So you could screw like a proper full-size camera lens onto it.
Would you do that, though?
It's actually, if you take
question.
all the things in a phone, what's the differentiator these days? What's the thing that goes, I'll buy that one over that one?
Well, that's what they're all looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great one, the camera. Obviously, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, then you've only got one choice. But if you're in a better, more vibrant ecosystem, then you've got, consumer choice that's superior.
It's weird that we're actually going back to adding lenses. Is that the next best thing? So we're actually now adding the stuff that we made disappear because it just fit in one phone, and we were so happy that we got the cameras, and now we're adding lenses again. Is that,
Are you suggesting that innovation has got somewhat of a circular nature to it?
But it's one of the things, though, right? You take a good photo on a decent smartphone camera now.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, the difference to, say, when the original iPhone came out, it's massively dramatic.
Well, the iPhone for the last few years, its main innovation has been lens-based, hasn't it? It's been camera-based for a while. You know what it reminds me of? Is it a skinny jean or is it a flared jean? There's a cycle between...
Everything comes back into,
There you go. That's what it probably is. Right, so I think we cracked that. That's the innovation cycle done.
Well, that's it. Yeah, job done. Bang on.
All right, so on today's show, we have got IDC, who are going to talk to us about 5 major trends going on in the industry today. I won't steal the thunder of that conversation, but I think it is a useful framework for us to have a look at what's going on at the Congress this week. So joining us for that, we've got Ahmad Latif Ali, who's an Associate VP. And then joining us after that is Tobias Larsson, who's B2B Head of Telia in Sweden. If you don't know them, Telia is a Swedish multinational telecoms company. They operate in Sweden, Finland, Norway, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, that space of the world. They also own TV4 Media. So Tobias is going to give us a perspective on growth in the industry and how a couple of the IDC trends kind of really resonate with him. So with that, let's go first to our conversation with Ahmad. I am delighted to say that joining us right now is Ahmad Latif Ali, who's an Associate VP, EMEA Telecoms Insights Analyst at IDC. Ahmad, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Our pleasure. How's Barcelona so far for you?
So far, so got a lot of meetings, a lot of interesting conversations, broad topic areas, and the ecosystem is growing. Definitely, there's. I think I heard that about 60% of the attendees this year are actually not from the telco space at all. So it's interesting to see how that ecosystem is growing across board.
It's very consumer as much as it is, B2B, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get onto that, though, where do you stand on tapas?
Yeah, sure. Different strokes for different folks. But yeah, it's good.
Would you prefer just like a normal starter and main course? Are you into the whole sharing thing?
No, I think when in Rome. When in Rome. Yeah. So I'm definitely into the whole sharing thing, and no issues at all there. Yeah.
Ez, what do you think about the whole sharing thing?
On my left hand, somebody's getting really anxious.
Don't worry, I'm going there.
Are you going there?
He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
You have to have your own main. No one touch it.
I'm like Joey from Friends.
No. No one got my grubby fingers. Yeah,
I love to share. We actually shared dinner with tapas
I thought
last night, and I loved it.
It was very harmonious, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
We
It was
went
a
out.
very cozy local restaurant.
Lovely
Yep.
little spot. It was just me and Ez and our producer Marcel, who's over there. And thankfully there was nobody there destroying the sharing vibe. Hey Robert.
Well, David, you know my thoughts on tapas, and I don't like sharing. It's just a stressful meal. It's just the whole politics of who's had what, where, and when, and can you take it? And
We can go for rules like you
It's
always get the first bite, and we can help
No,
you with that.
You've got a meal, we have standards, and then you've introduced a completely different dynamic with loads of stress involved in it. Why?
You look anxious.
Yeah, he's already started sweating hands. It's like sweating palms.
It's too much.
Yes,
It's a good
well-
job I wasn't there.
Yeah, well, don't worry. We're going to try another tapas place tonight, so you get a chance.
Can I just order my own on my own table? Solo tapas. I bet you there's a market in that, right? For people like me who like the food, just
Yeah.
don't like the sharing.
Don't
so
like the
come for
co-
tapas and don't need to share.
Like the
I
food,
think
but they don't like the convivial atmosphere.
yeah. Copyright Cloud Realities. I've just created a new restaurant experience right there.
I do sympathize a little bit because you never know how hungry someone is, right?
I once had a tapas meal with somebody who's like a vacuum cleaner, and everyone else just sat there and watched them eat everyone else's food.
Is that what's put you off?
Yeah, basically. Bad experience.
Very good. Anyway, so enjoy the rest of the week. I am looking forward to talking to you about what's going on in the industry. So let's start with, what are your expectations coming in?
Yeah. So we have kind of 5 key trends that we look at as a market coming in, and the expectations that we really want to kind of draw out and insights for our own research and analysis. And I'll go through them. So what we looked at is kind of CapEx investment is tapering off for the telcos, for the telco industry. That's leading to kind of more structural transformation that's more intensifying as well.
So it's tapering off because the financial framework is shifting, or because the investment is reducing?
No, so I think this is the kind of convergence of 2 major trends that we're seeing more broadly. I'm talking about a worldwide level as well.
Sure, yeah.
So those 2 key mega trends is the fiber rollout reaching kind of the peak investment area, peak investment age, and also the second one being is 5 years since the first rollout of 5G. So certainly within Europe, especially, with Swisscom back in 2019 rolling out the first 5G, and we don't expect that the replacement rate for 5G standalone will be sufficient to cover off the non-standalone rollout in the beginning 5-year stage of 5G.
Can you just go a level deeper on that, just so I understand what exactly you mean? So is 5G still deploying, or is it a different phase of 5G that's about to deploy?
So right now there's 325 live 5G networks globally, and only 60 of them roughly, or 62 to be exact, are non-standalone. Non-standalone meaning the full scope of 5G. The main difference.
I mean, that explains a lot. We finally got to the bottom why 5G doesn't work yet.
As we're stood outside the conference centre, me and Dave had to access our digital pass, and the phone network had to work, and we were stood there for about 30 seconds going, the irony of being outside Mobile World Congress and there's no signal. The deep irony of it.
Yeah, so look, obviously 5G came in with 3 key main use cases, right? Enhanced mobile broadband, high speed, which everyone's experiencing now. You have MMTC, mass machine time communication, that's all about connection density. And then the final thing being ultra reliable, low latency connectivity. That's reducing latency and reducing the speeds, basically, in terms of the response of the networks, right? So far, what's happened in terms of 5G rollout is kind of a rollout of the 5G new radio, right? So 5G new radios that have been rolled out and able to harden that EMBB side, right? The enhanced mobile broadband faster. That's why you see, you can get significant high rates of download speeds and upload speeds. But the second phase is more about, but that's backing onto the second part of the network, which is the core. Right now, that core is still a 4G core.
Right.
So 5G standalone is basically leveraging 5G core. So rolling out that aspect of it, okay? So what I'm saying is that the investment in that area is not going to replace the initial investment for the 5G new radio. Right. So that's where we see that tapering off. Okay. I want to caveat that though.
Yeah.
So I cover these 2 key kind of conversions of 2 major trends. Fiber rollout, which is fiber rollout is basically you roll it out into the network, and it's bulletproof. It's supposed to lay there and work for decades, and it's bulletproof. That's a one-off investment almost, right? And then you've got the cyclical latest generation of mobile, which is now hitting that peak rate as well, as I explained. There's caveats to that. In the US, for example, actually the largest three operators, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, have actually came out and suggested that they're going to be increasing capex, and that's primarily driven by the BEAD program, the Broadband Equity Access Development Program. There's $40 billion, over $40 billion worth of investment happening there. That's allowed them to drive the capex in the short run. The second part of that is kind of the digital industrialization within China as well. So they've also come out saying that the capex is also going to be looking to increase as well.
Right.
But speaking more at home, my home place is in the United Kingdom, and obviously within Europe, Western Europe specifically, you're looking at more modest rate of investment, and in some countries also declining rates overall.
Okay.
So I think it's also just staying on that one. What's more important to also concentrate on is revenue. So revenue is actually for the telcos projected, according to our own forecast, to increase towards 2028 in line, broadly speaking, within inflation. But we need to also consider that capex intensity, was it the percentage of that revenue, is dropping from about 22% down to 18%.
Right, okay.
Wow.
There's multiple ways we can slice and dice that in terms of what does that mean for the telcos. Perhaps means better cash flow. What do they do with that cash flow? What are the strategies to kind of make them more profitable and have more of a stronger financial positioning? That still remains to be seen. So that's kind of the broad. But that leads to, that's trend number one.
Yeah, it's a good overview of investment. I think you're going to come on to structural transformation.
Absolutely. So that leads to more structural transformation. That's more intensifying. So this relates now to something that was mentioned by Mark Mutra during the opening keynote that he introduced himself in as a new Telefonica chairman and CEO.
Right.
And he broadly just mentioned that the industry within Europe is heavily fragmented and heavily regulated for multiple reasons, which we can go into. So that leads to more structural transformation, whether that's spinning off, that's consolidation or deconsolidation, spinning off certain areas of the business, exiting certain markets, mergers and acquisitions. Loads of those things and of these activities happened in 2024. We can look to Vodafone 3 in the UK, having the approval going from 4 operators to 3 operators. You can Orange Massa Mobile in Spain as well, going from 4 to 3 with some structural remedies as well that could potentially open up the door to a new 4th mobile operator to come in and establish themselves there.
Right.
But what I want to say is that these kind of mergers and acquisitions, the consolidation is all linked to competitiveness. And this links to many reports commissioned last year by the European Commission by Mario Draghi about the European competitiveness.
In the sense of we're heading towards only a handful of very major players in this space.
Potentially. So the focus here is that fragmentation has really stunted the growth for the telcos. Numbers don't lie.
Right.
There are, if we look at the average number of subscriber in Europe, for a population of 450 million people, or let's say the EU for now, 450 million people, the average number of subscriber is 5 million people. The average number of subscriber in the US of a population of 335 million people is 107.
Oh, wow.
So you look at the order of magnitude, right? Many vendors, so the leaders of the event and the vendor communities, also on the operator side, they essentially came out and say, look, for the telco industry to really thrive moving forward, they need scale. Right now, the competitive landscape within Europe is subcritical. It's achieving subcritical scale.
And what does that mean for the consumer? So, like, is that impacting my experience?
Your ARPU is a lot better. So, if you look at the ARPU compared to, there's multiple numbers around, but I'm going to use our own IDC numbers, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, the ARPU that we have for consumers within Western Europe compared to the US is less than half.
Right.
So,
and what does that mean?
Average revenue per user.
Right. Gotcha.
Average revenue per user is less than half, and that's again, you're going from 3 operators in one large country with 335 million people to an area where it's admittedly a bit higher in terms of population, but a significant increase in operators, right?
And does it mean that I get a lower price?
Yeah.
As an end user, or
yeah, that's basically what it means. Yeah.
Yeah, price and performance is what I'm sort of thinking. Like, the fragmentation would mean that each of the individual organizations can't invest as much in their infrastructure and also you're traversing multiple different infrastructures, presumably.
Correct. Yeah.
But if that then consolidates, the larger organizations at that point can invest in, the sorts of technologies you were talking about in Trend 1.
Yes. So obviously, the stronger the financial health, the more inclined they're going to be shifting to new technologies and new capabilities, new innovation. In the US, Ericsson had signed a large deal with AT&T, $14 billion at the end of 2023 for Open RAN, which is all about opening up the. So far, obviously, networks have been vertically integrated. The idea of Open RAN is to, have more of a cloudified RAN infrastructure, and that opens up the ecosystem there. So that's kind of the competitive landscape that's leading into that structural transformation. Also, I need to say that last year, so I've been coming to MWC, I think this is my 6th or 7th time. Last year we had the 4 CEOs of the telcos come out on stage and say, look, if we don't thrive in certain countries, we just exit it. And they made good on that promise.
All right.
Vodafone exited Italy, exited Spain in 2024. BT quite recently exited the Irish market for partial operations. That's in wholesale and some other areas, some partial operations that exited in Ireland. Telefonica have very, very recently come out and said they're going to exit the Argentine market in Latin America.
Right.
Bear in mind also, you've had a lot of C-level executive changes in the last 12 to 18 months, or 24 months, I should say. New CEO at Vodafone, new CEO at BT with Alison, new CEO at Telefonica with Mark, and obviously Margarita with Vodafone as well. And also on the vendor landscape, you're seeing some changes there. I think it's super interesting to see the new CEO coming in, the incoming CEO for Nokia, who's coming from a data center and AI background.
Right, interesting.
Which is super interesting. And if you put that all together, it kind of gives you an idea about the direction of travel in the industry.
And that brutality you talk about, that's in other sectors as well. We've seen it in automotive, where they're basically saying if the brand can't wash its face as a going concern, we're going to end it. So I think you find that in big business, they're more willing to kill something when it's not where it should be. And I think that's a rising trend, and I think it'll get more dramatic, not less.
So let's talk about Trend 3, which I think brings in satellites, and what does that? So let's just take a step back from the trend. Obviously, satellites have been a major part in telecommunications for a while. Why is it specifically interesting now, and what's changing?
Because satellite's been an industry that's going on for, I think, over 50 to 60 years. So far, the main focus of satellites has been on the geostationary satellite structure. Basically, have three satellites that cover the Earth enough because they're further away. Geostationary satellites are 36,000 kilometers away from the Earth. Right. That gives them enough range to cover three for the whole Earth. Right. Low Earth satellite operators are between 200 kilometers to about 1,600 kilometers. And that means they're much more close to the Earth.
Is Starlink fit into this?
Correct. Yeah. So I'm getting onto that. So Starlink, Elon Musk. Your question, to answer it directly, is why now? And this is true for any technology, right? If the market is not ready, it will not take off. Yeah. So the market is ready now because of the economics, and the economics of that is the cost to put the satellite through a rocket propulsion engine has gone down significantly through reusable rockets. Right. So I think that was a real key, one of the key drivers there. But also, deep pockets goes far in this industry. And satellite is expensive and it's hard. Right. We see Project Kuiper by Amazon. We see, of course, the OneWebs of the world with Eutelsat. You got to remember, there's been a lot of consolidation as well on the satellite front.
What's your read of, from an analyst perspective, why Amazon have got involved in this?
So bear in mind, you say Amazon, not Amazon Web Services. Uh-huh. So it's Amazon, the mothership, who is looking at Project Kuiper. The focus there is that they wanted to build infrastructure in orbit for enterprises. I think that's the main read that we're getting out of it.
I thought we might be getting there at some point. That's been kind of no pun intended, but in the ether for a while, that conversation, hasn't it? How do you see that evolving, and how fast do you see that evolving?
I think it's so this is public information. So they're mandated by the FCC to get out about half of their constellations before, I think before 2026, 2027, one of those years. Okay, so next year or the year after that, the constellation allocation is 3,236. So half of that needs to be in orbit in a fairly short time.
Right.
So that is coming to a head quite quickly, and they that's basically progressing quite well, in my opinion. I think it's important to point out that they are basically building out that infrastructure and offering an off-ramp to other. Just take a step back here. Amazon works backwards. Amazon is one of those organizations that you have to admire because they always work backwards from the customer.
Yeah, that's right.
They always work. I think a lot of vendors and a lot of hyperscalers say that, but very rarely do they do that. So Amazon, I think the genesis of the organization is basically customer first and always adjusting to what the customer needs. So this is why you see this Kuiper program, not an AWS initiative, although it's built probably leveraging some of their key frameworks and practices.
No doubt.
But there is a off-ramp, there is a gateway there to offer different interconnectivity with different players in the market. What's also important to point out is from a sovereign perspective, you see the IRIS² program, which was recently approved by the Europeans, the EU, in conjunction with the European Space Agency, which we spend a bit of time with as well, basically to guarantee the sovereignty of certain businesses, the citizens of Europe, governments, public sector, etc.
Like the GPS network, isn't it? They talk about the European version of GPS and starting to put that up as well to protect us from as you go into the geopolitical situation.
Yeah, two things are coming ahead, and I'm going to relay and say a statement or relay a statement that Mark Mutra also said quite recently. The way we think about connectivity now is probably the same way we thought about defense 5 years ago. So how we think about defense now could be how we think about defense in 5 years' time. The way we think about defense now could be the way we think about connectivity in 5 years' time, in terms of the importance, in terms of the sovereignty, in terms of the self-reliance of it.
Yes.
Well, we see that.
So two things could come to a head. You've got the technological things that are happening, but also you've got the geopolitical defense conversations that are happening. That two things that could come ahead that could play well, or not well, but well for as a business opportunity for some of the service providers or some of the regional telcos that are mandated from a regulatory perspective to have local presence, local capabilities, and be that kind of sovereign player within the the European region.
The ever evolving discussion around sovereign cloud as well. I think we'll see
absolutely
expecting to see European players pop up in that space, and then more recently sovereign AI.
Yeah, so let's unpack that. That has exploded in the last 6 months. Supermicro, NVIDIA have come up and really come out the gates with a lot of white paper and thought leadership to really drive the demand and the art of the possible, and having those discussions with the telcos and having a partner program for the telcos.
Right.
So there are three ways to look at AI for the telcos: AI in telco, AI for telco, and AI by telco. So the AI in telco is basically within the infrastructure of the RAN, the radio access, to make it more efficient. The AI RAN alliance is a key example there to drive up the network efficiency and drive down the cost per bit eventually. The AI for telco is all about the internal kind of IT operations, OSS, BSS, improving efficiency, improving the optimization, chatbots, billing inquiries, so on and so on, which is happening.
So similar transformational themes that you see in like many verticals.
Correct. But now we're entering a stage whereby, and I'm coming to my third, but the AI by telco, sovereign AI factories for inferencing, for training models. I live in the UK. There are, you guys see it as well, in terms of derelict buildings that lay around that data centers, all data centers. that could be repurposed, for example, for co-location services, for data centers. They could, co-location is like kind of data center hotel almost, right? In that sense, that could be repurposed to host data centers for AI inferencing, AI training models. That could be an opportunity to transform and pivot a cost center to a revenue generator for the telco. Wrap that around connectivity, wrap that around with sovereign trends, wrap that around with self-reliance. That could be an opportunity for the telcos.
That's an interesting point, though, about what services they offer, because one of the positions is that the hyperscalers have had so much time in a world where there's no other competition, other than maybe China, arguably. What is the level of investment required to get parity with their service?
They can't do this without their partners, so that's why you see the partners really trying to activate this market. As I mentioned, Nvidia's of the world and also Supermicro, etc., really coming out with plenty of white papers, presentations. You see a couple here today. You see it in the lead up to MWC. I think this time next year, I'm expecting to see, AI factory everywhere, sovereign AI everywhere. In terms of this year, it feels, especially on the vendor side, agentic AI agent things that really, but that's quite relatively new term. Technologically, you got the RPA side and AI side, which has been in
Rob's been struggling to decouple that for a while. You're just going to add to his confusion here.
Should we demystify that?
Dave does jest, but
no, I mean RPA. It's I used to work for an RPA vendor many years ago, and the term virtual worker and digital worker was there in 2018.
The concept's the same. It's just it's dramatically more advanced, basically, and has a better
That's exactly
interface.
it. No, honestly, that's exactly it. It's RPA++ and wrapped around with generative AI capabilities. There is obviously the complications of the large language models, etc. But the concept of agentic AI, let's see where that takes. Would that move the needle for the telcos specifically? That remains to be seen.
I think it might move the needle in the middle one, the AI for telcos. I think it'll move the needle in that because it's going to drive hyper automation even further than it's gone before, in the way it will in other verticals.
For internal transformation, but the telcos right now, they're like, okay, how can that help? How can I use this to make money? How can I use this to make more money? How can I use the revenue generator? This is all internal to save my OPEX. What I want to say is that the aspect of AI factories, they don't have a birthright for this, the telcos, right? It's something that
it's a pivot. It's a pivot, isn't it?
It's a pivot that they need to make. They actually need to step up to the plate. Is what needs to be.
But they've chosen such a difficult market to enter. I mean, if you think about the complexity, I get the diversification of a telco. We've seen it before into media and all sorts of stuff. But that's a tough gig to crack into. Considering your competition and things like DeepSeek and the pace of the market, you're moving into a market that A is racing along and B is incredibly complicated.
So I think their role in that is not to challenge, of course, the DeepSeeks of the world. So what DeepSeek did is completely democratize the industry, the AI industry, right? So instead of what we expected to see maybe a few dozen or dozens of LLM models, we're going to probably see hundreds of LLM models because that cost has significantly reduced. So the proliferation of the LLM models will really take off. But on the flip side, when that happens, you're leaving behind security and privacy. When a proliferation goes up, you're leaving that out. It's outside. It goes out the window. So where there's a positioning there, whether they face up to that is another question.
Well, the whole LLM thing, the efficacy of the model, understanding why it's done it, the security and the privacy associated with it, it's all been left out. It's like they're going to have to retrofit it like they did the internet. You know what I say, Dave?
You know what
that's
I
what
know what you want to say, Rob, about internet security.
That's what they said about TCP/IP.
Yeah.
So TCP/IP was the same concept, right? And then the end-to-end encryption, the security protocols came later.
Yeah.
So it will get there in the end in terms of security. Who are the key winners there?
So let me try and swing us back a little bit to the theme. So we talked about investment in networks. We talked about the structural transformation going on in the industry. We touched a little bit on satellite partnerships. Why don't we just return to that for a second?
Yeah, so let me walk through the partnership models and how they look like. Right now, there are two different types of models. There is the MS model and the MSS model. The MS model is basically leveraging mobile spectrum that the telcos already have procured. That's the T-Mobile in the US and Starlink. What that means is, so in the US, there's a 30%, we talk about coverage, right? But in the US, anyone ever driven from New York to New Hampshire?
I have not.
I
would
have
like
Boston, up to Boston to New York. I've done
You
that.
you're doing that on holiday, Michelle?
I'm taking the kids, yeah.
Yeah.
So we yeah, exactly. So me and my wife, we're visiting her family, not mine, but her family up in New Hampshire, more acutely Hampton from New York, and our signal dropped out on the Google Maps. And I'm like, where are we going? Because it was that
is a problem at that point.
That is a problem at that point. You're like, okay, we're in a foreign country. We're in the US.
This would cause me travel anxiety. Download your maps before you go. Download your maps. Download your maps.
I think you've got a tip for what you're going to need to do later this year, do you?
So, and I was surprised, like, what's here? I mean, the cell coverage is pretty bad. So we would focus on coverage, mostly on population coverage, but what gets left out is land coverage. So land coverage gap in the US is 30%. So 30% of the country is not covered by cell.
But this is a thing. In drama in the US, they can legitimately claim, I've got no phone service. You know, when they're stuck in the desert and they're broken down and they're, you know,
it's true. And we actually think like,
yeah, we go.
Exactly. And in Canada's worse, it's 75%. But that's 90% of Canadians live.
You've got like Nunavut up the top where nobody lives type thing.
In Europe, we have a different issues, but just talking about coverage gap. So going back to my point, Starlink basically got the approval to use T-Mobile spectrum in those areas. So now you can be in the middle of, I've seen a couple of Joe Rogan videos. He's in the mountain on the back of his truck, and he just puts the Starlink size of an iPad, and he's streaming Netflix in the middle of a mountain, basically. So with that, you can penetrate the market quicker, and you can also offer services directly to device, unmodified devices. So key point here, unmodified devices.
Right.
That's one model that's happening, and that partnership is taking off. The second one is the MSS model, which is a mobile satellite spectrum model. This is spectrum that's been dedicated by the ITU for satellite services. Right now, it's very, very shallow. It's only about, I think, a few gigahertz wide in terms of the bandwidth. So there's limited availability, limited spectrum available, and spectrum is basically the oxygen for networks to function. That is changing, though. But just going back on that point, so that partnership model is Apple with Globalstar.
Yeah.
So the device and chip makers with the satellite providers directly, but having to use modified devices or latest devices like the newest iPhone 16 or 15. All right. All the devices cannot connect that. That's the two ways.
I see.
As the Apple Globalstar way, without the operator using a satellite communication that's dedicated and not interfering with frequency bands, because interference is a big issue, like we're getting a little bit now.
Yeah, that's right. It's ironic.
And then you've got MS as well. So these are the two functions. But the ITU function, the one, the MSS, that has satellite allocation, that's changing. More and more allocations will happen in the future.
So from a user experience point of view, you've got greater coverage and all of those sorts of things. That presumably, the partnering and the different strategies in that space must be impacting then the structural transformation element of what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, we saw a recent announcement yesterday with Vodafone, and we're doing a JV with a satellite operator.
Right.
So they see the opportunity there in terms of partnering to I wouldn't. If I was a betting man, of course, the satellite operators are not considered a competition to the telcos. It's more complementary.
When you say that in the competition point, it's much more convenient to receive a signal from above your head than a mast that has a hill in the way or you're in a gully. Is there not a world where it all comes overhead and you get rid of the base stations on ground?
No.
And is that capacity or is it complexity?
It's physics. It's physics. Yeah, right. It's physics. I don't see that ever happening, to be honest with you. And it's just not viable. Just put a it's much cheaper to build it on Earth than to put a satellite.
It's a cost thing.
It is a cost thing, and it's also physics-wise, it's just not possible. It's just not possible. And right now, there's so much macro networks already built out that does a good job, anyways. It's just there to offer a complementary on the direct-to-device side. Don't forget, satellite offers so many different use cases. I see four main ones, and then we can move on to the other topics as well. D2D, which is direct-to-device, so direct-to-cell phone, disaster recovery, backhaul, and also satellite IoT. IoT is coming coming back with satellite connectivity.
Yeah, you can track your asset anywhere on the world.
Exactly, agriculture, energy, mining, wind farms. All difficult to build out. All difficult to build out a network in the middle of the sea. So using a satellite with connectivity to devices will, I think, will come back for sure. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So we've done, I think, 4 of the 5. We've done investment in what's going on in investing in the networks themselves and how that's tailing off a little bit in certain parts of the world. Structural transformation of the industry.
Yeah.
How the role and importance of satellite and the different strategies around the partnerships. We talked, I think, to AI and the impact that AI is having in the 3 different types of
how it's
AI,
crystallizing in the industry.
How it's crystallizing in the industry.
Absolutely.
And then programmable networking, maybe to bring us to a bit of a conclusion.
Absolutely, yes. So programmable networking, I think this is a compounding kind of trend that started in 2022, I want to say, with the Kamara API Alliance, announced here at MWC, and then was built upon in 2023 with the GSMA Open Gateway initiative. And then last year we saw a bunch of use cases being announced: quality on demand, the fraud, SIM swap, 2-factor authentication, etc. And then this year we're seeing a lot of kind of discussions and practical implementations of these network APIs. So far,
and what it means, if I understand it correctly, and let me put myself out on a limb here and attempt to explain this.
Here we go.
I'll be
Drum
ready.
roll, audience. Yeah, is Dave going to make a?
So I think it is. So you mentioned it. There's APIs available for network.
correct.
So that means if I'm building a cloud native application,
Yep.
the network becomes a programmable part of that application.
100%. That's exactly
Everything
right.
is code, David. Everything
literally
is
everything
code.
is code.
Literally everything is code.
So it's basically having the network exposure, right? So far, it's a closed. It's closed. No, it's not been. A lot of activities now in the last few years is all about hardening the supply side.
Right.
So the operators working with the vendors and building aggregator platforms. So you've got Aduna, which is kind of the new. They've got a stand here in terms of the partnership between Ericsson and the leading operators globally. And then you've got, for example, Nokia acquiring Rapid, which is a huge kind of developer hub for building APIs. So as I mentioned, just going back to my point, a lot of effort now has been about hardening the supply side. Now it's about activating the demand side.
Right.
So, for example, I went to a very cool conference, I must say, last year in Croatia called InfoBip Shift. This is a developer conference. I also go to AWS reInvent every year, and that's a developer conference, right? A lot of guys with hoodies and walking around with van trainers and a lot of swag and a lot of a different crowd. They are talking now more and more about network APIs. I don't think it's fully there yet. I think we still need to do a lot of work in terms of community engagement, hackathons, DevCon, which they've got here, by the way. So the GSMA have that DevCon happening across the road.
What's the most interesting case study you've seen so far?
So so far, the most interesting use case is going to be quality and demand, but that's not there yet. So let me back that up. So far, the most commercialized one is all about fraud detection, fraud identification, etc. Vodafone have come out with their scam signal capability, and that's basically allowing you to use the network to identify if a fraud is happening. Some perhaps like the parents, grandparents get a phone call trying to make a transaction over the phone, trying to defraud someone, right? So the network can be used to identify, okay, is this an incoming call? How long has the call been going on for? Statistically, if the call is going on for more than 25 minutes, that's a high likelihood that it's a scam happening, if coming from a certain area. Are they trying to access their banking app at the same time? So all of these signals are then presented to the banks, who have hundreds of signals, is bolted on to help them with the efficacy rate to reduce fraud. Because guess what? In the UK, of course, with regulation, if you're frauded, you're protected.
That's right.
So there's huge fines and huge payouts that are made. So to reduce the liability of the banks for that really helps them, and they find that valuable.
And Google are doing a lot on this as well, where that signal detection, they're putting it into the handset. Your handset starts to tell you what you're about to undertake looks like fraud. So it's a great thing about that whole shift to educate the user to help them out, which is the threats that are coming at the individual are getting more sophisticated. There's more of them every day, etc. And I think we're starting to see the rise of the defence. That's a cool use case, though, to say the bank detects it on your behalf and then shuts you.
The bank already has tons of signals, but having this signal on top of it just helps the efficacy rate, right?
What I do hope is that we do not get loads and loads of notifications of all these different, telcos, but other applications and the bank, then it feels like you're being attacked every second.
And then people will start to ignore them because they'll get bored of them, and then they'll get scammed again. Yeah, you can see human behaviour starting to get like
scamming through the notifications. It seems like an attack vector to me.
Maybe that's a thing you should do. New business model: pretend to be an anti-scammer, and then actually through that become a scammer.
Look at that. Always thinking, Rob. Thank you for taking us through the big 5 trends you got in your head coming in. Just to wrap up, before we wrap up, what did you make of the keynote? And did it touch on the things you expected to see?
Absolutely. So Mark Murtra said that calamity is acceptable, but decadence is not.
Ooh.
So that was a strong statement.
I mean, that's something I wouldn't have expected. What did he mean?
That was his closing remark before he handed over to And
can you explain to a non-English person what it means? Because it's quite...
Decadence basically means like luxury, living and self-indulgence.
Okay. Right? You hear that, Robert?
What are you inferring, Chapman, over there?
So I think the initial point is that would be the Europeans or regulators or whatever, it's kind of resting on our laurels. We had a successful period during 3G age, during the era of 3G. The telcos were flying high. The vendor ecosystem was flying high. If you just look at the market cap over that period for the telcos and for the vendor ecosystem in general, I should say. In 4G, what happened was that it was a much better network, much better capability on the network. But what happened is 2 things happened at the same time: ultra fast broadband, and the iPhone came out in 2007. So iPhone came out in 2007, and then 4G networks were officially released in 2010. And that proliferation of applications, but they didn't make the money. The ones who made the money were the OTT players. The ones who made the money were the CPaaS providers, the Twilios, the Infopips of the world, the Vonages of the world. They're the ones who made the big money, because you ever wonder when you're in the US, in the UK or in Spain, and you go to the US, you go to any other country, and your Uber just works. There's a platform there that makes it work. There's the aggregated platforms, the CPaaS providers who've done the integration with all those networks globally and build a framework, build a business model for that. The telcos could have done that easily. And it's an easy way to enter a market and build their muscle there. So I think that's what it meant. And I feel like his key point here is the regulators. There are 27 market regulators in Europe. With one overarching market regulator. That's stifling growth, that's stunting growth, and that needs to be addressed. That they are basically pleading once more to help.
Well, and that's the only way you're going to be able to compete. So people often compare the EU to the American markets, but we're not structured in the same way. Like you say, 27 regulators, 27 nations.
But it was years back.
But it was years ago.
Yeah.
So 1996, the Telecommunication Act was signed by Bill Clinton. That significantly consolidated the whole US market, the whole telecommunications market. That went from a few dozen players to just 3 players that we have today. So this is the power of the telecom. So, unofficial plug here. We have a report coming out in a few days. It's an editorial right now that looks at the state of the European telecom market, consolidation changing the scene for the next decade for Europe. So regulators have a key role to play here, and you've seen that example in the US in 1996, and then look, almost 30 years later, what the situation's like in terms of the players. Look, I'm not saying the US market, every market is different. There's different policies, there's different cultures, there's different everything. We're a continent of different languages, cultures, identities. There's different things here. So, but can we learn lessons from elsewhere? Yes, we can.
And with us now, I'm delighted to say we have Tobias Larsson, who's B2B head of Telia Sweden. Tobias, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, same. Really nice to be here. Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us at MWC.
Yeah.
What's your first impressions?
I think it's massive. It's actually the first time since I'm here that I'm here on the buyer side. I was here more on the selling side before.
Right.
And it's a completely different game, but super relevant. I think many good dialogues, relevant topics, and easy. When you do a lot of those dialogues, it's really interesting to craft out kind of what's important for you in a couple of days. So really valuable.
So what does it mean to be a seller here, and what kind of different, or buyer rather, and what kind of different perspectives do you get of the conversations?
So as the seller, you want to book the meetings, you want to understand more.
Oh, you're being courted this time, is it? And
yes,
everybody's coming. Oh, I like.
hundreds,
Everybody wants to talk to you.
And it's also what do you want to talk about. You can set the scene and actually kind of get really, really high quality content presented, and kind of really select partners that really work in that space. So it's an amazing event to meet kind of CXOs from large companies, start initiating or setting large deals, and it's really it's very relevant.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like hiding your badge?
No.
Because I know
No.
sometimes participants do that. They change badges, or they hide
to not
it.
advertise that they're buying.
Change
you
with
mean?
who?
Just to make sure that they're not being hunted all the time.
Oh, I see.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not that bad.
That's good.
No.
I have this scene now of somebody running down the middle of the thing with a load of people with paperwork saying, sign here behind them.
So, in Barcelona generally, how do you find Barcelona?
Oh, it's an amazing town. I came Sunday lunch. I had the opportunity to spend some time downtown as well. And I think it's beautiful town. I like the life in the town, that it kind of lives up again at 10 o'clock in the evening. And then it's crowded.
does.
Then it's fantastic. A Sunday night, a Monday night. Love it. I could definitely spend some more time in Barcelona.
Now, we're doing this session, given that we're here, we're kind of examining the notion of tapas and whether you're pro or con the sharing plate situation. So on our panel here, we have got one sociable person and one
That's me.
antisocial person.
200% pro. 200% pro.
Yes.
Sunday I had
no.
it tapas 4 times. Yesterday I had it 3 times.
Did
so
you?
I'm constantly just eating.
I'd be an emotional wreck in the corner. I couldn't cope.
Think of all of that sharing and social
Sorry for that.
life thing, Rob. What's your favourite dish?
Ooh, of the tapas overall, I can't say. I think the seafood versions are excellent. If I need kind of select a part of the plate, perhaps.
We had the
Squid.
what was the little fish? I can't remember the name of them now. I want to say
Anchovies.
mackerel. The anchovies. Have you had the
that was also
anchovies?
No, that's not part of my.
So you would
plate.
think so it wouldn't be normal.
All
You
the
would
rest is
normally
good.
fancy it. Absolutely delicious. Anchovies and sherry vinegar. That was my highlight yesterday.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Yep. Good.
You're not
I
into
just gotta
seafood
shout
anyway. You
Just
don't
gotta
have
keep
problems
shaking
with
my
that. You take it.
Yeah,
You're not into seafood,
You
yeah.
can have that dish.
So coming into from a business perspective, then coming into MWC this year, what's in top of mind, and what are you focused on initially?
I mean, being the B2B head, I think it's important for me to get the next trends, so both kind of the long-term growth, but also getting inspiration on kind of here and now growth, because we constantly need to think about growth. The traditional kind of low single-digit growth in telcos, we need to kind of leave that behind us. So it's a lot about kind of growth and radical improvement, seeing what's behind the corner
I see.
in that space.
In the pursuit of growth here, what does that look like? So what is your day-to-day like, and what sort of conversations are you hoping for?
Here? No, but I think meeting with kind of consultancy houses like Capgemini, and also with different vendors, and understanding what they can offer, both in terms of kind of how to utilize our 5G investment even more. It's a lot about talks about the kind of how you run the 5G SA, how you publish APIs and open up for new use cases and new uses, and kind of undress that and try to see what is the actual revenue streams for us. Customer benefits, great. That's one thing.
Right.
Kind of how we build it, one thing. How we talk about it, one thing. But then taking it down to the actual revenues, I think it's been great dialogues. For one thing.
Right. Now, we had IDC on earlier in the day today, and they talked about 5 specific trends, and I wonder, with a growth perspective, what you think about a couple of them. Let's start with one that's maybe slightly more difficult to conceptualize at the moment, which is this notion of programmable networks, which, if I understand it correctly, and Robert, feel free.
I'm looking at you now. I'm waiting to see what you come up with.
It's like APIs are available to people who are making programs.
That is
That was a great
outstanding.
explanation.
I mean, you have described. Oh, you've excelled yourself.
I have now just broken my badge as well. This is going very well, isn't it, so far?
Basically, you use our networks when they make applications.
That's it. See, Tobias, I can see why you're in B2B. Thank God you're here. So when you apply your growth lens, what does that mean to you as a telco?
No, but I mean, so far, you need to look a bit about the history as well. That we had, you remember back in the days that you charge per minute and so on.
Oh, yes.
It was very kind of, we had great days in the 90s in the telco space. Then it's flat fee, and it's all kind of a best effort network. You can use it for data, you can use it for voice, and when you have good coverage, then it's pretty good. And when you have bad coverage, it's pretty bad, kind of.
Right.
So what you can do is to kind of set up specific parameters. You can identify a person via the cell phone and have a kind of, then you know that person is that person. That it kind of helps any application when you can identify the person behind the cell phone. You can have positioning through the 5G network, for example, 3D positioning, very detailed positioning that you can also kind of use in any application. You can have a guaranteed kind of response time, that meaning that you can go from a best effort network into where you can actually steer surgery, an ambulance, business critical, life critical, defense, what we see. So you can trust the network in a way that you haven't been able to do before when it has been best effort. You can have that you have coverage that you always covered, you always have connectivity for different reasons, like so the youth don't kind of download films while you need to have a kind of an emergency somehow, or the factory goes down because it was a new season released in the area. So that type of kind of stuff you can then add to the programmer community, and they can develop then the kind of business specific applications, and having new things added to their application, they can trust in another way, and they can do new stuff.
Right.
And that's the kind of common value that we see.
One of the what I love about that type of ecosystem is when you open up the APIs to the community, it's what they come up with, the use cases that you never
the thousand
perceived.
flowers blooming.
Yeah, and you just go, I'd never thought you'd do that with it.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere just going.
And so much value in it.
Yeah. Actually, complete the crowdsourcing the solutions is always
It's a bit
much more
similar.
powerful.
When we released 4G, what is it now, 10, 15 years ago, iPhone and App Store came almost at the same time. And I think App Store did a bit with that. That used the iPhone hardware with kind of, you could drink the beer with the iPhone and use it as
we all love
saver.
that.
Yeah, because
Those
it
are
had
the
the
days.
gyrometer or whatever it is in an iPhone. So it also used kind of new components to do new applications.
Yeah.
It wasn't Apple developing those as it was before.
So there's
It opened up.
the story about the guy who wrote the game Trism. I don't know if you remember. It's a little triangle slidey puzzle. It was one of the first big hits on the App Store for Apple, and he just did it in his basement type thing. Forgot about it, sent it to the App Store, opened up his bank account like a month later, and they deposited like over £1 million into his bank account, because basically it was a 79p app, remember, back in the day, and it just went viral, the app, and everybody just went 79p, easy peasy, have it there.
And I remember that, I'd forgotten about the fact you used to have those sub £1 apps.
Yeah.
You still have those? Everything's free now.
They're just
It's all
they just
advertising.
push adverts in now, don't they? The economic market for apps have changed quite a bit.
I do remember that. The looks like you're drinking a pint out of your phone.
The beer, yeah. Or the red button, the really expensive app that just sent your screen red just to show you had money.
I mean, those are the days, weren't they? In more innocent times. Not like where we are now, eh?
Well, it was simpler, wasn't it? No.
So life was
Back in the day.
We're analog to what we do with the APIs right now, at least.
Yeah.
So easier to understand, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a better definition than mine was. So
Even better than yours.
Yeah, you did well there.
I liked yours.
So how do you think it's going to show up? How are you guys thinking of presenting your APIs? Like, are they going to be in like a marketplace? Do I just like to say I'm creating an app and let's say it's right across the Nordic?
Yeah, you're going to need a marketplace for the apps to make them easy accessible. You need to market kind of also the capabilities in those APIs, of course, to make them the standard for identification or for positioning or so on. Because then, but also, I mean, already now we have a very close collaboration with Ericsson due to our kind of Stockholm footprint, where we have. So we set up a common program where we have called North Star, where we use their R&D, so kind of 5G network with capabilities not even on the commercial market anywhere yet, where we go into our customers, the large enterprises in Sweden, and co-innovate use cases to really try out, is it any use of this? Because that is a part of the kind of $1 million question for the telcos now. Yes, we believe in the kind of idea of the APIs. We do believe in kind of the future, as we explained it. If you give it to the community, things will happen. But it's very hard because we haven't seen it.
Right.
Yeah.
You just don't
know
know
Apple
yet.
about the App Store, but they believed in the idea, so you need to release it. But seeing is believing. So what we're doing there is to kind of co-innovate to get the temperature check on the industry to understand what are the kind of the benefits, how big are the benefits? Is it 70 cents, as you said, or is it maybe even more?
Yeah.
You never know. Well, the other area within those trends that occur to me as being a growth driver for I mean many industries, but certainly your industry too, is this notion of how AI is crystallizing and becoming clearer as how to use. Now, IDC set it out as in 3 groups. This may or may not resonate, so tell us what you think. The first one is AI to telco, so kind of where AI is impacting on the services that you're creating. So you've got to think about that as one dimension. The second dimension was AI for telco, which is almost like what you would do internally, much like any of the other vertical industries. There's going to be aspects of Gen AI, aspects of agentic, aspects of all of the other flavors that are going to impact and transform organizations. And then finally, and perhaps most interesting, the AI by telco, which is what is the opportunity as a result of being a telco. Maybe it's footprint, maybe it's network, maybe it's something else that allows you to be a viable provider of AI. And where we went with that with IDC was into the realm of the emergent space of sovereign AI and what that might mean. I wonder what your take on that is. Does that resonate with you, or?
Clearly, like we call it AI for operations. You have AI for customer fronting things, and AI for our own products. And
right.
If we start with the operations, it's a kind of a clear benefits. We have all telcos have tons of data, partly unstructured and so on, and very expensive processes. And it's very kind of a delicate smorgasbord for an AI to dig into and improve efficiency, kind of record and structure customer information in a better way, and also then kind of improve processes without having those full massive transformation. When it comes to the customer facing, it's both kind of in the customer dialogues. You can look at it. We have all the chatbots and all of that can actually stepwise improve how you do the customer, but also so kind of understanding complex RFPs, helping us respond to that.
Right.
So it's
right.
a bit more with that type of kind of sales back office. But I think, as you said, I think you were into that. So the most interesting is perhaps the kind of the product, what we actually sell.
How you can convert it, or.
And I mean, the basic stuff will be with contact centers and unified communication. Yeah, you can clearly improve that with AI, helping our customers with having AI as agents. But then also, I think with the shift we're seeing in the market now, from globalization to deglobalization, where you try to keep your data local and try to protect the data and keep it in much closer sovereign loop.
Yeah,
I think the telcos, from being commoditized, when we went to kind of flat rate, I mentioned that before, we came from kind of pay by minute and by local area access, whatever it might be, into kind of flat fee, best effort, kind of all you can eat data. The over-the-top players kind of took over, so you have video calls not really impacting. So if it's a video call, the telco's network is used, but it's no revenue for the telco. we were commoditized, you can say, in
Right.
that for 15, 20 years.
Like pushed down the stack.
Yeah.
Not part of the upper stack.
No, exactly.
Execution.
Where the huge revenue development has happened.
Yeah.
And when that happened in the beginning, there were telcos reacting, so they forbid apps like Skype and so on their network.
I
That was
remember
the wrong,
that.
yeah,
I remember that.
wrong
Yeah, yeah,
dialogue,
yeah.
but still kind of a natural reaction to defend. In
Well,
one
of course,
way,
because it directly impacted core revenue streams at that point.
If you think about it, all the utility services you use, power, water, whatever, they're all metered. But for some reason, networks went through that stage where they become unmetered and the business model just flipped. And it must have been quite a lot of chaos at the time about how we're going to make money next.
Yeah, and I think we read the market too short in a way. I think we need to get back to consumption-based pricing, because what you consume is what you should pay for, because then you get it directly linked to the benefit. So if I steer that's how they do in cloud. The more compute power you use by any cloud provider, the more you pay. So entrance point is very cheap, so you can try out, it's fine. But once you scale up, you also pay for the scale.
Well, you can
Same with AI.
You can certainly see how that model directly applies to that API-driven and programmable networks.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that straight away, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at me very blankly, Robert. Have I said something wrong again?
No. I'm just looking at you, Dave. For this. I don't know how I answer that question.
It's an audio medium. That's all I'm saying.
Did I have one of those looks on my faces that I didn't realise I had on my face?
You did.
And then I have to correct it.
Have you heard of that thing, Tobias, where cowboys, out on the range, they learn how to go to sleep with their eyes open?
Now that
Was
is
that the view?
Yeah.
Now that is
so
a
they can
skill.
keep an eye on the cows and have a nap.
Yeah, I can recognize that.
Yeah.
But to come back to the AI topic and kind of the deglobalization we see with the data is kind of again the being a local player, because for some time it's been tough for us to be kind of a local footprint on a global market. The applications are always global, but we have our footprint, and that has been kind of a prison in a way in a global company. Now once again it becomes a benefit to be local. We are the only ones who can actually take the data from any location, take it through a slice or our own fixed network, all the way to our own data center, where we can have a kind of a local version of an AI, and having a complete closed loop with not any leakages of the data anywhere for a customer, and having complete sovereign AI and sovereign cloud and sovereignty. And I think that's a huge benefit, and also being able to set up. So that's of course cost a bit more per use, but then also being able to steer it to the cloud if needed.
And it's funny, the world exploded out, everything globalized, and now we're collapsing in. It's like a big cycle, isn't it? But you're right, you're well placed.
It's going to be mixed. I think we're going to have both public cloud and sovereignty, and I think the key will be to let the customers decide where do you want your data.
Well, it's that placement strategy. If it can be global, send it out, get the best. If it has to be sovereign, great. Just as long as they're integrated and in a secure way. Yeah, that's what you want, isn't it?
Even kind of really secret industry could actually benefit from having stuff in the public cloud, but you need to know your data.
Yeah. Well, and I think for most organisations, that's you've just nailed the problem, which is, have you got proper control and understanding of your data? Usually the answer is not quite, in varying degrees. not enough.
Sovereign, and then we
and then you go, well, let's just But I think once that maturity hits, then that type of ecosystem will thrive.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So a really interesting and actually broadly unpredictable period, because I think even if you wound back a couple of years ago, sovereign cloud was a conversation, but it wasn't being driven as hard as it probably is
niche
now.
And now it's not niche.
Now it's definitely not niche. Now it's
niche.
mainstreaming massively. Yeah. I agree entirely with your take on it, which is telcos are ideally
placed.
Actually, you know what? More than ideally placed, pretty critical.
Yes.
In the new geopolitics
in
terms of owning those things.
Especially incumbent telcos.
Right. So maybe just to bring us to a bit of a conclusion today, then. It's always difficult to get into the world of prediction, but when you look out maybe across the next choose your own time period, 6, 18, 24 months, what do you see happening and what are you looking forward to?
Wow. Summer.
Yeah.
No, it's a good answer.
No, that was too easy. That was too easy.
It's just rain for a year.
We all feel like that.
I do hope that we part is that the economy turn, of course, in general.
Yes,
I
right.
think we as telcos, because I think it is kind of an industry thing that we start marketing and getting that move over to the telco networks, shifting a bit about the model into kind of the consumption.
Yep.
So we start seeing. I don't think the massive growth would come in the time period you mentioned, because we're fast moving, but that's a short time frame anyway. But I would really like to see some clear breakthroughs in that space, and I think we will.
All right. Very good. Well, look, Tobias, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us today and exploring this fascinating and fast-moving world from your perspective. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your time in Barcelona. Anything you're particularly excited about doing in Barcelona for the next couple of days? Robert is going to go through the mill with us because we are going to do tapas every day.
I was going to say kind of seafood tapas with Robert. That would have been amazing to see. Just watch it.
As long as I get my own table.
Now I'm going to continue my
It's a joy to
tapas
watch.
marathon now.
Yeah. Well, have fun. Thanks very much again.
Thank you.
So, good start to the week, I think. A bit of insight there into the world of what's growing in the consumer lens of the conference, but also from IDC, what's going on in the wider industry, and then Tobias's views on, particularly on how AI and things like programmable networks are going to drive growth in the industry, and how actually sovereignty itself is kind of a very interesting space for telcos. Also, Ez, it was good to see Rob prepared with some facts and figures.
Yeah, he's always on point, huh?
Our producer actually has helpfully given me the answer that I couldn't give
At
you
what
earlier.
point during your Saturn V anecdote did you realise you didn't have an end to that anecdote?
At the point when I had to stop talking because I didn't have the number.
Right.
I went all the way to the end and went, oh, this isn't working. I do have the number now, David.
Well, let's talk about that on day 3, Rob.
As a cliffhanger.
I think we should leave it as a cliffhanger. And
It's one of the worst cliffhangers in the world because you can just Google it. But
you could probably do that with most cliffhangers, to be fair.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's probably
spoil
true.
it for yourself, don't you?
If you would like to discuss any of the issues on today's show and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to connect and DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to our guests Ahmad and Tobias. Our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louis, our producer Marcel, and of course to all our listeners. See you in another Telco Reality soon.